Welcome to my studio, and I'm just going to give you a little tour of it. I've got some brand new shelving all labelled up with all my bits and pieces, mostly collage materials in there, and I've put a few of the paintings around the wall this side. There's my chair that I sit in to work sometimes. Coming round, I've got stacks and stacks of work that goes back quite a few years. As you can see, I haven't got an awful lot of space left to put much more, but I keep having ideas as to how I can make more shelving and make a bit more space. There's my easel that I had for my 21st birthday, still going strong, and a table where I set up all the paints and everything like that. And coming round, I've got my guillotine where I cut all the mouldings, and a few more shelves and the mouldings up there, because I make all my own frames. And then today I've set up a still life, which I'm going to do as a painting demonstration, and I spent quite a lot of time yesterday setting it up. I went to the florist and bought the lovely flowers, which I think are lovely and vibrant, and I love that sort of clashy colour combination. And I used some of my drapes. I've got quite a collection of drapes, all different colours, and pots and all sorts of jugs and things that I can put in a still life setting. And I'm going to stand here at the easel. I'm trying to give you an idea of how it's going to look from my point of view. I stand up because I like to look slightly down onto the still life, rather than if you were sitting you'd be looking very straight ahead at it. So that's more or less the view I'm going to be working from. And when I work, I use a viewfinder. I'm just grabbing my viewfinder, if I can just grab it, and I'll see if I can just show you. Oh, it works. There we go. Another way up. That gives you a little idea as to how I choose the bit of the still life that I want to paint. And I would go quite close in, so that some of the flowers are probably going to be off the top of the canvas. I like that more sort of informal composition. Anyway, I'm going to get started painting now. Right, I'm going to start on the painting. I've got my board, which is MDF, and I've given it a rough coat of gesso because I like a lot of texture in the work. I've also got my viewfinder, which you can see there, with two L-shaped pieces of card, and the shape in the middle is approximately the same shape as the board. So I can use the viewfinder with one eye shut to see the image that I want to recreate on the board. And to start with, I'm using a very vibrant colour. This is going to be the underpainting, don't forget. So I want something very vibrant, and as I put the paint on, I'm thinking a little bit about the composition, just very roughly at this stage. Doesn't have to be perfect, because everything I do can be covered over, and that's the beauty of working with acrylics and oils. So just want to get some marks down, and I can block in some colour as well. So every now and then I'll check through the viewfinder to see if I'm getting it about right, and probably even at this stage I need to move that over a bit, which is fine. And I've got a jug, it's coming here. See, I'm not trying to be accurate, I want it to be very free, and I'm just trying to get key shapes in this early on. Looking at the thing as a whole, we've got this sort of black vase that the flowers are in. It's quite tall, hence the tall shape of the board, and this basket of fruit. You can see what I'm doing is I'm looking at the shapes, very broad shapes, I'm not getting any detail whatsoever. In fact, there's no point at this stage getting any detail in. I've put this flower down here because I thought that would really give a nice balance with the two bright flowers up, well, there are lots of bright flowers up here, and they're going to be quite key to it. And as you can see, it's starting to come together in terms of the composition. I used, I want the flowers to go off the top of the board a bit, which I think they're going to. It's going to be a very informal composition. And what I've done is I've placed the items to try and create more depth. So the vase here, the black vase, which it will be black eventually, is in front of the basket. And the jug is in front of the vase. So we've got, this will help to create a feeling of depth by having one thing in front of another. And that's to give you a little clue as to how I've set it up. And it took quite a long time to set it up yesterday. You might think, why have I used that vibrant pink? Well, this is an underpainting. This is acrylic paint, and I like to have a really vibrant and textural underpainting over which I can paint with the oils later on. And what that does, that means I can actually have all this lovely colour underneath, which later on, little bits of that colour can come through in the finished painting. So I don't have to be very precise at this stage. I can be very free, because ultimately I want a lovely free painting at the end. I don't want it to be too detailed and very rapid easel. So I'm really getting a lovely base over which to work with the oils. You could use acrylic just to create a very tonal painting in a more traditional way, or you could just put one colour and then paint over it with the oils. I like to use the vibrant colour, and I find it really exciting that the colour can come through. We can get layers of colour. A lot of my work is about layers. I do these oils which are over acrylic, and I also do collage, and both of these ways of working for me are about colour and layers of colour. So I'm now getting some more colour in, different colour, gradually bringing in some of this yellow of the sunflowers. Obviously that's going to be a key colour, and my brush it does help me to keep it very free, because it's literally a decorator's brush, one of the cheapest brushes you can get, and I like it because it's got lots of character, and that's what I want in the paintings. So I treasure it, and I keep them as long as I can, because they are like an old friend. Now the brush, so important to keep it clean, especially when you're changing colours. So I always have fresh water at hand and kitchen roll to keep it nice and clean. The actual paint I use quite thickly, and I like especially using the heavy body acrylics, and that helps to keep the paint lovely textures. So I'm bringing in some different colour now. Although the jug is black, I'm going to get some different colours in this area where the jug is, the vase, because there's a lot of reflections. It's actually glass and it's quite black, but there's a lot of reflection on it. So I'm bringing in all sorts of colours, and as I use a colour as I've got a colour on my brush, I'll try and bring it in to other areas of the painting, so that the colours move around. Might not be the exact colour of the finished painting in that area, but don't forget this is the underpainting. So I can afford to be quite free with the colour as well as the style of work. Really want to get rid of this white as much as possible. I've got this lovely, I love this sort of turquoisey cerulean blue. It's mixed with a little bit of the viridian just to give it that turquoisey feel. It's not the exact colour of the drape, but which I quite like, and I can put another layer later on with the oil of a different colour, and it's just going to make it sort of a bit more alive than just painting a flat colour. You can see at the bottom where we've got a white drape, it's not white at all, it's quite a nice warm yellowy orange, because that's going to give me warmth in that area. Again, I don't want a dead white, I want to keep it nice and warm at the bottom. So very quickly, don't have to spend a lot of time drawing things out. If you for instance didn't feel very secure with your drawing, I would suggest you did a separate drawing first on some paper. That would familiarise you with the setup and the shapes, and then put the drawing to one side and work without a drawing on the board, and that way you're more likely to keep your work very free. Right, so just now getting rid of the white as much as I can, bringing the colours throughout the painting, and at this stage I can even go in and work over some of the acrylic that I've already got there, because basically it's just another layer, so I can bring in other colours over the top. The other thing I like to do is, I do use Payne's grey, but I tend to mix it with other colours. So I've got a lovely cobalt violet, which I like mixing with the Payne's grey. And I'm just going to go in, because it's really nice to have some darks in at this stage. Although it's not really a tonal painting as yet, I'm thinking about the tone. And a lot of the areas, like for instance the white cloth and the white flowers, I can put in later on with the oils. So I'm aware of that, but I do like to get some darks in. So what I'm going to do is really pinpoint just a few little bits where I think I'm going to want some darks. So I have to think ahead a bit. And the other thing, which is a very useful thing that I like to do, is I'll get this area here, which is very dark in between the flowers. I'll get some of that in as well. I've got another very important brush. It's hardly a brush actually, it's just a bit of an old, it's an old brush with, I've got two here, look, they're just sticks really, because I tend to use the wrong end of the brush, and this is the wrong end of the brush that I'm going to use to draw into the wet paint. And as you can see, well, I don't know how clearly you can see it because it's more of an indentation in places rather than an actual paint going on. And what I'm doing is I'm checking some of the drawing, and I can change things. I can bring that jug a little bit further up and draw it, just get an indentation in the wet paint at this stage. I use this scratchy old brush because, again, like my other one, it's got a bit of character. It's not going to be a fine line that I would get with a very fine brush. And it's one of the things that I do to help keep the work very free. If I was to draw it with a very fine brush, all the detail and everything, it wouldn't be what I wanted. So I'm going in with my scratchy brush. It also creates texture because I'm getting these lovely indentations in the thick paint. So I want to get some darker shapes up here, and the flowers and the foliage is going to go off the board a little bit. Got this gorgeous sunflower here, which we're only going to see a bit of it. Some of it's going to be going off the board. I want that informal composition. If I was to enclose everything in the middle of the board, it would be much more formal, and that's not what I'm trying to achieve. So, still working with vibrant colours, still working with the acrylic, don't forget, this is the underpainting. I keep reminding you of that, but some people think, oh goodness, they have a bit of a fit when they see all these colours going on. But it really does create a lovely surface over which to work. And you can see that even now I'm still thinking about the drawing, have I got things in the right place? Doesn't have to be dead on accurate, because even at the next stage, the oil stage, I can go in and change it completely. We've got this little jug, it's got like a little check pattern on it, and I'm just breaking up that area there with a bit of colour, and more of that kind of detail to go in later with the oils. Right. I'm also going to go back in now with my brush, well, the brush that's actually a stick, and just draw, really just getting some lovely indentation in the paint, building up texture. And I can be quite bold with this, I can scratch and scrape, and we've got little daisy flowers that are going to go in here. I can sort of just create a bit of texture in that area where these flowers are going to come later on, and with the oils. There's a big sunflower leaf coming down this side here. I'm just going to get that in, and the sunflower itself, just a bit of drawing in with my scratchy brush that's a stick. You could just use a stick, I suppose, if if you've got one to hand rather than a brush. And there's the basket. Again, handy to have a bit of texture at this stage. You might not be able to see that very well, but it's there. And I can still keep looking, checking, changing things, even at this stage. We've got a flower here. It doesn't look much like a flower at the moment, but I can do a bit more to that later on with the oils. Finished the acrylic stage of the painting, the underpainting, and you can see there it is, and there's the setup. Looking very pink at the moment, but I don't think it will stay too pink for too much longer. And coming round to look at the palette, you can see I've cleared away the acrylics, put them completely away, put a new piece of greaseproof paper, and then put out my oils. And you can see, I'll go in a little bit, I'm very, very generous with the oils because I'm going to be using quite a lot. And this here, it looks like a slug. It's actually an impasto medium for oils, and what that does, it helps to speed the drying of the oils, and it keeps the texture, the lovely buttery texture of the oil paint. And there's my palette knife ready to be used for the next stage of the painting. The painting is dry. Now you can either let it dry naturally if you're a very patient person, or if you're in a bit of a hurry like I am sometimes, I'll dry it with a hairdryer. And it's dry. What you don't want to do is mix up there's a little bit of wet paint. You don't want to mix up the oils and acrylics together. That's why I've put the acrylics totally away, and I've now got a clean palette with the oils. And I have in front of me this lovely underpainting, which if you could touch it, you could feel all the lovely textures of, which started off with the board and the gesso, and now with some of the acrylic and all the lovely little indentations made with my scratchy brush. So I'm changing to a palette knife. Some people say, why don't you just carry on with acrylic, but I like to use oils. I like the feel of the oils, and there is a difference when you're using it with a palette knife. And I just, well, hopefully you'll see what I mean when I start to paint them with the oils. The first thing, I've got lots of white and I'm going to mix in a lightish colour. Actually no, I'm not. I'm going to use, I want to get the background colour, which is fairly light, but it's not actually that light. So I'm mixing up this turquoisey colour. I've got a bit of viridian and a bit of cerulean blue. Basically they're the same colours that I use with the acrylics. I don't use many real earth colours as such. They tend to be very vibrant colours, and if I want an earthy colour I'll mix it. So I've got this palette knife or painting knife, it should be called, and I'm going to just get some paint on. And I don't really use the palette knife always in the traditional way. I use it in all different ways. It's just an implement for getting paint onto the board, and I don't worry about a right or wrong way. I also have a bit of tissue, a bit of kitchen roll or something, and I like to sometimes just go in with that and blend a little bit of the oil paint. But you can see there that I left some of that pink coming through, and that's going to be generally what will happen throughout the painting. This stage, I'm actually not, although the paint's thick, I'm just scraping it across the board. And the palette knife most of the time at this point is quite flat, and what it's doing is it's picking up texture of the board, creating that lovely textural layering of the colours. As I mix my paint, I'm mixing in some of the impasto medium. Try not to forget that, especially later on in the painting if the paint gets a lot, if I'm using thicker paint, then I'll definitely want to add a lot of that in, because otherwise I'll be waiting weeks and weeks for it to dry. If I use the impasto medium, it takes a lot less time. I'm going to go in with my bit of tissue now, just to soften some of it a little bit there. And the thing with oils is I can go back and put another layer of oils on if I want. So while I've got this colour on the palette knife, I'm going to look at other areas in the painting where I want this colour to come. So a bit up here, because I don't want to work on one area. I want to keep moving around the board, and you can see without even touching the vase that the actual vase is starting to appear, because I'm looking at the negative shapes around the object. That is the shape behind and in between, rather than the shape of the object itself. Already the pink is starting to go a little bit. Now on the left side here I've got slightly different colour green, so I'm going to just add a bit of the cadmium orange, just to warm that green up a little bit and soften it a little bit, so that when I go in now, as you can see, it's a slightly different green on this side. So all the time I'm adapting the colours as I go, and sometimes I just can't remember what colours I've used, because I've used so many colours to create something. So it's all about practicing mixing these colours, and it's something you just have to learn over the years. So, as I said about the negative shapes, I've got down to this area here, and I'm looking at the jug. So I'm not going to do anything to the jug itself, but I'm looking at those shapes around it and between. And that's going to, if you like, it's almost redrawing the jug as I go. And this green drape's going to come down this side here where the handle is. So you can see the handle appearing already. And we've got this lovely softer green this side. I think I might bring a little bit of that over here. Just not too much, but just a little hint here and there. That's right, it's just a nice softer, warmer green, just to bring that in here. And we've got this sunflower leaf. I'm actually going to try to bring that in as well at this stage. That's quite a fresh sort of, I'm going to make it slightly brighter green, bring that in, just so you can see how that pink it's not gone completely because there's little tiny flecks of it showing through, and that's what's giving it a little bit of life and vitality, hopefully. And while I've got this fresher green, I'm going to just bring a few other leaf shapes in here and there. Just at this stage. I don't have to finish off one area before I move to the next, because if I can keep things moving, and if I can do a little bit and then move on and then go back to it later on, I'm less likely to overwork it. People that come on my workshops, they always want to learn how to free up, how to make paintings that are free and lively. And that's one of the things that comes up, is to keep moving. Don't try and finish an area. Keep moving around the painting. So, still with a little bit of green. I'm just going to go in here. We've got the apple here. Just put a bit of that. While I've got this green, because what's important is that the colours move or permeate the painting, and I've not got like set areas of different colours. So, and actually the lovely green on that jug, I'm just lightening this up slightly, and I can go in here with a bit of the green here while it's on the knife, because what happens is I'll get so many colours. I won't. So I'll just bring a bit of that in at this stage. So I can go back, I can adjust things throughout the painting. To now get this area in here a little bit more with the white cloth. Obviously it is a white cloth, but there's lots of shadow and reflection on it. So I've got my white paint, and I'm not worried if I get a little bit of other colour in it, because I don't want it to be a dead white. It's what I call a dirty white at this stage. And of course I've got the sort of orangey yellow underneath, which is, I'm going to try and let some of that show through a little bit. And I'm just going to use the knife, drag it over the colour, and the same thing applies here. I've got the basket there, and I'm going to look at the negative shape. That's the shape between the basket and the lemon here. Yes, it is a lemon. I know it doesn't look like one yet, but hopefully it will. And we've got this jug, so I've got the edge of the jug down here. So all these objects are starting to appear a bit clearer because I'm looking at the negative shape. And if you do any, you know about drawing, you'll have heard that being used, that phrase being used before. So although it's a painting, I also regard it as drawing as well. You have to be able to draw a little bit, so to paint, because this type of thing. So practice your drawing if you can. And you can see how the shape of the jug is starting to appear. I'm not trying to be fussy with it. I don't want to, like a very detailed painting. That would be a totally different demonstration, and I wouldn't be using the materials that I'm using now. I'd use very fine brushes. The reason for using the palette knife was one of my ways that I felt would help me to free up. And I in the past I've done quite a bit of mixed media work with pastels and working over gouache, and I used pastel over the top, and that's what really made me think about using the acrylic underneath the oils. and then using a palette knife, because a palette knife is very similar to, I feel, using a stick of pastel, and that's how I came to do it. So we've got these shapes that are appearing now. We've still got some of the vibrant orange coming through. I'm going to use a bit of my kitchen roll just to blend a little bit here and there, especially along the edges, to neaten that off a bit. And I can go back to all these areas throughout the painting. Right, as well as looking at the negative shapes between these objects, I want to start to have a little look now at the foliage and the flowers. We've got the darks. Remember, I put the dark in with the acrylic. I don't use Payne's grey with the oils, but I'm mixing up a dark colour with all my dark colours on the palette, and I'm going to go in here and just pick out some areas that I think need these dark tones, including actually the vase. So it's not black, although the vase, you would call it black if you saw it. There's a lot of reflection on it, and I don't want that dead black colour, so I'm just lightly going over the acrylic with some oil, and I'm going to leave quite a lot. I love that bit of pink coming through, so I'm going to leave that there, not cover it up too much, and I can bring this down here and use that to help dissolve the jug a little bit more. The edge of the jug here. But I don't want things to be too sharp. I like things to have soft edges most of the time, and occasionally a little sharp edge is a good thing, but I like things, because it's a round object, it's not flat, so the edges are quite soft, there's a lot of reflection. I'm going to bring a little bit of interest on this edge. I'm using the edge of the palette knife just to create a softness there, because there is quite a bit of reflection coming in on this side, a bit of light, and then on the other side I'm just going to lighten this up just slightly and go similar idea there. So I don't want to do too much to the jug, to the vase, because it's not a very interesting shape. The interest is in the other objects around it rather than the vase itself. So I'm going to carry on a little bit with some of this darker colour just in between some of the shapes, and I think the next job is to start looking at the flowers and the objects in themselves. So I'm going to start with the lovely yellow of the sunflower, putting lots of my impasto medium in. And the thing with that is to keep it nice and clean, because as you mix the colours in, the colours can get a bit muddled. So I'm trying to keep nice and clean palette. Beauty of a palette knife is that you can clean it very easy just with a bit of tissue or a rag. So I'm going to go in now with some vibrant yellows. We really need to start getting some of this colour in. I'm using very thick paint, and it's just lovely. You get that lovely buttery feel, lovely texture. And again, I don't want to spend ages looking at each individual petal and getting it exact. I just want a feel. You still have to look at the shapes, but it doesn't have to be absolutely so much detail that you lose that vitality. So let's get cracking. Sometimes I can get quite involved and work quite quickly on something like this, and that all helps to create the movement and the life in the painting. Got the lovely textures. Do you remember all that scratching in with my little silly little sticky brush? Well, that's created lovely textures around this area where the sunflower is. Mixing up a slightly different yellow for this one over on this side. They're not all exactly the same colour. Slightly paler yellow for this one. Just going to bring that in quite quickly there. It's going off the board because as I said, I want this very informal kind of feel to the painting, and that's going to help to create that, and it leaves something to the imagination. You know, you have to look at it and you have to imagine what's going on beyond the painting area. So trying to get that feel of looking at the sunflower on its side rather than looking at it straight at you. So I'm using very thick paint. That's why I need the impasto medium to mix in, because otherwise it would take forever and ever for it to dry, and I'm not that patient. So gradually getting the flowers together while I've got this slightly paler yellow. I'm going to do the lemon. I've got this lovely orangey colour with the acrylic underneath. That's creating a bit of warmth and a bit of shadow perhaps. So while I've got the colours, I'm trying to use them throughout the painting. Just a little. I'm going to bring actually just slightly, not actually the yellow, but a slightly greeny yellow. Bring a little bit of that into the jug as well. Here. And on the top of the jug there's a bit of a pattern, and I'm just going to hint at that at this stage. I don't want it too detailed. I'm just sort of giving a little hint to that. And gradually building it up, so I'm not spending too long on the jug. I can go back to that and put a bit of lightness on this apple here. So although I'm working on the flowers, I'm also working down here as well. I'm gradually bringing in the different colours. I don't want to work on the lemon and make it too detailed, because it might not be necessary. So I'm now mixing up a bit of blue, because we've got some quite vibrant blue flowers in the painting. And I want to get that in now. don't know what they're called. I rarely know what the flowers are. Obviously I know what a sunflower is, but not much more than that, unfortunately. And a bit more blue here, just to sort of add a bit of contrast. And the blue obviously is going to come down here for the jug. So similar to the vase in that it's quite shiny, and so it's got reflections and it's got shadows. So although it's blue, it's not without those other colours coming in. So I'm just going to leave a bit of the colour coming through, and you can see I'm trying to get a feel for that kind of horizontal glazed effect, and a little bit of light on this side. It's just going to help to add to that lovely roundness. I don't want it to be a hard edge because it's a lovely soft rounded shape. And I can bring, while I'm on this area, I'm just going to bring a bit of light into this part of the jug, the spout, just to sort of pick up on some highlights there. And also the pattern, there's like a grid pattern. I'm just literally going to use the edge of the knife, if I can, pulling it off a bit, just to get a hint at that checkered pattern on the jug. I don't want to do too much more to the jug at the moment, because in actual fact I might not do much more to it, because I like things to be free, and I don't like everything to be very detailed. Some areas can be more detailed than others. Another sunflower to just put in up here. Using very thick paint, but it really makes the sunflowers lovely and lush, and the texture's just gorgeous, and hopefully it will look great. Keeping the palette clean is quite important. Trying to get some more of my impasto gel out, because that bit can get mucky, and the yellows particularly needs to be nice and clean. It doesn't take much for it to go very green or lose its colour. So with a palette knife you have to be very direct, especially when you come to using the oils over oils, because there's some areas where I've already got oils and I'm now starting to put a bit of oil over the top. Like here I've got the blue that I've just put in, and now I'm getting some yellow in very close. So you have to be very direct. Put it on, leave it. Don't play around with the paint on the board too much, because otherwise you're going to lose that vibrant colour. It's going to end up very, very muddy. And I'm just looking at the top left hand corner. I've got a little hint of a I think it's a gladiola in the background here, and I just can't really see it, but I want to get that light area in. That's going to help to make everything else stand out. It's a very, very pale pink, and it's got a very a lovely vibrant pink edge. I'm not going to worry if it doesn't look like what it's supposed to look. It's just going to add a bit of texture and light in that corner. And I've got another plant, don't ask me what it is, but over this side, which is just creating a lovely bit of texture and light in that area there. And you can see, having said don't mix the colours up, I've on purpose just kind of blended those colours together to create that soft area. Now down here I've got these, they're not daisies, there's something else, but they look like daisies. So that's what I'm going to call them. Down here I've got a bit of green, lovely fresh green. Here the leaves. So I'm going to use the knife just to create a bit of texture in that area of these underlying kind of green leaves. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to actually bring a bit of colour, a bit of green here. We've got a leaf. Don't want to hide completely that dark green of the acrylic, so just a bit of light. And in a minute I'm going to be working on these white flowers up here. They're big daisies, but I know they're probably not daisies, but they are to me. And down here we've got the leaves, just a bit of leaves out of the garden, just to start to fill in some of these spaces. Okay. Now we've got the lovely vibrant pink of the gerbera. I think it's a gerbera from the florist. Again, mixing up a lovely thick paint on the palette knife, because I really want to go in now and get these flowers in. And I love that colour pink. It's just so lush, and it's going to make it look, I think, quite funky with the yellow. Probably not everybody's choice of colour combination, but that really makes it something a bit different, I think. And I've got a magenta here. You can adjust it slightly with a bit of white or even a bit of cadmium orange or something. You don't have to use it straight from the tube. You can just adjust it slightly. But it does give you that lovely kind of pink that you need. I find magenta is a really useful colour. I find cobalt violet another useful colour, especially when you're doing a lot of flowers, which I do love painting flowers, because I just love being able to put all those colours together, and the texture obviously as well. So I've got two gerberas up here, and then I've got the one down here. So I'm going to bring in this one a bit more. I just thought it would add something to having one down here rather than just the two up there. It would just create an interesting, more interesting composition. So I'm using the knife in various directions to get the shapes of the petals. And what I can do, I'll clean the knife off with a bit of tissue. It's so easy to do. If I was using brushes it would take forever. Washing, cleaning the brush, using different brushes, so I love using a palette, and I only use one palette knife. You could, if you wanted to, try different shaped palette knives, but I like just this one. And I'm just going in with the white, almost white, just to describe those petals just a little bit. I want to use the edge of the knife like that, and then I'm going to get a bit of very dark paint to get that centre. Whoops, this one's gone on the floor. Get it in, and just to get that. And perhaps using a bit of the dark, I can define some of the petals a little bit more. Though it's quite shadowy because the light's behind it, so you've got these dark areas. I rather like that. And while I've got the dark colour, I might as well just have a look at these up here. That helps to describe them a bit better. And what they have is like a little, if you look closely at them, a little area around that dark centre of little tiny dots, probably like pollen or something, around the edge, just creating that definition there. Okay. And there's a bit of the stalk, I'm going to just put that in so I don't forget it later on. There we go. Going again off the board, so something like that. I'm going to go in with a bit more of the pink, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit lighter with some white, because there's a little bit of light on some of these flowers. So I'm going to also add a little bit of the orangey colour, the cadmium orange, just to kind of lighten it up. It's very difficult to get these colours, and that is just going to add a little bit of depth to some of the petals, like that, and this one down here, like that. Now I don't want to get fiddly with it. This is the thing, you know, at this stage it's easy to get fiddly, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to move on now to looking at these white flowers. I've got white flowers now to go in. I'm going to start with these little ones here. Just a little hint at the daisy shape of them. I don't want to get fussy, but what that's going to do is just liven up this area and create a nice bit of interest and light and depth, because you've got the lovely dark background and the texture of the leaves, and then the flowers over the top. Don't want to overdo it, so that's probably enough for now. And then I've got the larger ones as well, so lots of paint. You can't get away with tiny little splodges of paint. You need really large pieces, splodges of paint. Here we go. And try and be very direct. Think about what shape you want before you do it, and then go for it and leave it The more you fuss, the more dead the painting's going to look. It needs to be fresh. So even if it's not exact, as long as you can get a feel for what the setup is, you know, a feel for it being this lovely, vibrant array of fresh flowers. So the pink that we had in the underpainting is now not completely covered because there's little bits coming through, but it's looking much more like the colours of the flowers that they should be. Little touch of light on the orange, and also on this edge of the basket there, and the same with the lemon. Just a little bit of light there, and here on the jug. Now, a few more bits to do, but I'm nearly at the end of the painting. I want to get a little bit of a centre to some of these flowers. There. A touch, not overdoing it. And with the sunflower, it's quite a dark area there, and also, and then just some, if I can get a clean, nice clean palette knife, I can just put some lighter texture on that. And just one more thing, a little bit of light on some of these leaves. Actually quite a variegated leaf. And just for the last little thing, I need some really thick, quite a light, bright yellow. Because what I want to do is go in and just add a little lighter touch on that sunflower, just to give it a little bit of a highlight. And I think I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to overwork it, and I think I've done enough. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and hopefully see you again another time.